What if the Botswana you know, the one filled with luxurious safaris, sparkling diamonds, and pristine landscapes, was only part of the story? Beneath the surface of this so-called success story lies a country grappling with stark inequality, the cost of progress, and the struggle for a future that many never see. In a land where sexual freedom is touted as a triumph, many still face exploitation, where diamond wealth fuels an economy but leaves millions in poverty, where women fight for their rights amidst deep-rooted patriarchy, and indigenous communities fight to preserve their identity in the face of modernity. This is Botswana, untold, unseen, and waiting to be understood. Botswana, a country known for its dazzling wildlife, sprawling deserts, and diamond-rich soil. It's a land often celebrated in travel magazines, where tourists flock for safaris and luxury experiences. Its capital, Gaborone, is modern and bustling, a symbol of political stability and economic success. But beyond the glittering surfaces of wealth and political stability lies a reality that few get to see, a reality shaped by inequality, struggle, and the human costs of a diamond-dependent economy. In this video, we're diving deep into the hidden truths of Botswana. We'll explore the stories that don't make the tourist brochures, the stories of sexual freedom versus exploitation, the unresolved battles of the indigenous San people, the stark contrast between urban opulence and rural poverty, and the complexities surrounding women's rights and gender equality. This is Botswana beyond the safari, a place of contradictions, resilience, and untold stories. Botswana, a landlocked country in southern Africa, is home to just over 2.6 million people. It is the size of France, yet sparsely populated, with vast stretches of wilderness, desert landscapes, and game reserves. The country is bordered by South Africa to the south and southeast, Namibia to the north, Zimbabwe to the northeast, and Zambia to the north. Gaborone, the capital city, lies on the southeastern edge of the country, just a stone's throw from South Africa's border. It's a modern city, buzzing with the energy of commerce, politics, and a growing population. With English as the official language, Botswana is one of the few countries in Africa where English is the dominant language of government and business. But despite its stability and relatively high GDP per capita, Botswana's social and economic inequalities persist. The country, often hailed as an economic success story, still faces significant challenges. The wealth, generated in large part by its diamond industry, is concentrated in the hands of a few, leaving a large portion of the population struggling to make ends meet. Botswana has long been seen as one of Africa's more sexually liberal nations. It was one of the first African countries to decriminalize same-sex relationships in 2019, and the public conversation around sexuality is more open than in many of its neighbors. In many ways, Botswana stands out as a beacon of sexual freedom in a continent where such topics can often remain taboo. Yet, this freedom comes with its own complexities. The reality on the ground tells a different story. In a country where sex is openly discussed, the stigma surrounding HIV/AIDS remains pervasive. Botswana has one of the highest HIV prevalence rates in the world, with nearly 1 in 5 adults living with the virus. The country's success in providing antiretroviral treatment to its citizens is often hailed as a model for the continent. Yet, access to proper education, particularly in rural areas, remains limited. Young women, in particular, face the brunt of this epidemic. Many young girls find themselves in vulnerable situations, where transactional sex is sometimes the only way to survive. Despite the government's efforts to curb HIV rates, including free healthcare and education campaigns, the deep-seated social taboos surrounding sexual health, as well as the intersection of poverty and gender inequality, perpetuate the spread of the virus. Botswana's sexual freedom is paradoxical. It exists, yes, but it's tainted by exploitation, inequality, and an epidemic that continues to ravage its most vulnerable populations. Despite its image as a middle-income success story, Botswana is a country marked by stark contrasts. At one end of the spectrum are the gleaming high-rises of Gaborone, the upmarket malls filled with international brands, and the affluent suburbs where a small, privileged elite live in comfort. At the other end, informal settlements and impoverished rural areas are home to a large portion of the population, where basic infrastructure, like clean water, electricity, and healthcare, is still a luxury. The gap between the rich and the poor is not only a visible divide, but a systemic one. In Gaborone, the capital city, luxury homes and gated communities stand in sharp contrast to the sprawling informal settlements where families live in makeshift houses. The disparity is palpable, and it's a reality that Botswana continues to grapple with. The country's reliance on diamonds has, for many, been a double-edged sword. While diamonds have fueled the country's economic growth, they have also exacerbated social inequalities. The country's poverty rate remains high. More than 16% of Botswana's population lives below the national poverty line. Rural communities face an uphill battle when it comes to accessing education, healthcare, and even basic services. Unemployment rates, especially among youth, remain stubbornly high, and there are few opportunities for those who live outside the urban centers. Botswana's diamond wealth has done little to bridge this gap. The country's economic success has largely been driven by a small elite, while many Botswana still struggle to survive on meager wages or live in conditions that barely meet basic human standards. The San people, also known as the Bushmen, are the indigenous people of southern Africa. For thousands of years, they lived as hunter-gatherers, moving across the arid landscapes of the Kalahari Desert in search of food and water. They are one of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth, their language and traditions shaped by their deep connection to the land. But today, many San people live on the margins of society. Forced off their ancestral lands by government policies, they have been relegated to a life of poverty and exclusion. In the name of modernization, the government has relocated them to resettlement camps, where they are often deprived of their traditional way of life and forced into a new, unfamiliar existence. This has not been a smooth transition. The San struggle to maintain their cultural identity in a society that places little value on their traditions. Language loss, limited access to education, and restricted access to land and resources are some of the key challenges they face. Many live in poverty, with little to no access to healthcare or other basic services. In recent years, there has been a push to give the San people greater autonomy and recognition. Some have fought back, demanding land rights, better education, and the preservation of their culture. But the government has not always been receptive to their demands, and progress has been slow. For many San people, the fight for their identity and their land continues as they navigate the tension between preserving their heritage and adapting to a rapidly changing world. Diamonds are Botswana's lifeblood. The country's economy is built on the precious stones found deep beneath its soil. In fact, diamonds account for nearly 80% of Botswana's export revenue. The partnership between the government and De Beers, the mining giant, is often cited as a model for the continent, demonstrating how a country can leverage its natural resources for economic growth. But the reality of this diamond dependency is far more complex. Botswana's diamond wealth has brought immense prosperity, but it has also created a nation reliant on a single industry. And in an era of global economic uncertainty, that dependence has become a double-edged sword. The global demand for diamonds has been in decline for years, and the rise of synthetic diamonds is changing the market. As Botswana's diamond revenues begin to dip, the question arises, what happens when the diamonds are no longer enough? The government has recognized this challenge, and efforts have been made to diversify the economy. Tourism, banking, and technology are being promoted as alternative sources of income, but progress has been slow. The reality is that diamonds have shaped Botswana's identity, economy, and politics for so long that shifting away from this dependence will not be easy. Botswana has made significant strides in advancing women's rights, particularly in the legal realm. The country has introduced laws to protect women from gender-based violence, and women are increasingly taking on leadership roles in politics, business, and civil society. In recent years, Botswana has been lauded for some of its progressive policies, including a landmark 2020 ruling that granted women equal inheritance rights. For many, this was a victory in the fight for gender equality. However, the progress on paper doesn't always reflect the reality on the ground. In rural areas, traditional patriarchal values continue to hold sway. Women often face discrimination in the workplace and in their personal lives. Gender-based violence remains a pervasive problem, with women and girls suffering from abuse at alarming rates. While the country has made significant strides in addressing these issues, much work remains to be done. Women in Botswana continue to fight for equal rights, equal opportunities, and the freedom to live without fear of violence or discrimination. Botswana is a country of contrasts. Its diamond mines gleam with wealth, yet its people struggle with inequality. Its wildlife and landscapes are breathtaking, yet its indigenous populations continue to fight for recognition and respect. But despite the challenges, Botswana remains a place of resilience, a place where people from all walks of life are working together to carve out a better future. The real Botswana is not the one depicted in tourist brochures or government propaganda. It is a country filled with complex stories, deep struggles, and the constant pursuit of justice and equality. This is Botswana, unseen, untold, and all too real.